So the other day we talked about setting up a basic, pretty quick lighting rig for the toss across animation project. This model was really simple. It was never really meant to be lit up, but I think we can get a little something going on so that when you put it on your reel, it'll look nicer than it is now. I mean, if we just render this now, it's pretty ugly, and that's even just basic mental ray. So let's try to dress it up a little bit. First thing we're going to probably want to do is just go into the side viewport. The legs of this thing are shorter than the spinners, so we're probably going to want to extend the legs a little bit. So just went into vertex mode, and let's say we just pull down the legs, something like that. As long as the spinners can go around without bumping into the floor, we're fine. Alright, so let's do that. And go back to the perspective view. Next thing I'd probably recommend is when these things render, because they were just made very simply with a single edge on them, I think if we put a little bit of a bevel on them, they'll pick up a little bit of light. I think that'll look nicer too. So why don't we just grab all the spinners, hold down Shift, and let's click these spinners and go into the Edit Mesh, and down here we have Bevel. And let's just check the settings. It's set to, well, let's just set it back to reset so we're all on the same page. I'm going to set it to absolute, so I already have a value I think that's going to work pretty good. Let's go 0.35 and set this to 3 and hit apply. And I think that'll just smooth out the edges just a little bit. That way we can pick up a little bit of light on them. And I think that'll just make it a little bit nicer. Alright, so they're all there. And if you feel like you want to change it, you can always go into the attribute editor and you can change them right there. But I don't think that you're going to need to change much. Alright, let's create a floor. And we could create a whole a kind of a curved wall, but I don't think that's going to be necessary. If you feel like it, go right ahead. I'm just going to put this down below the feet and expand it out pretty far, just so that I don't have to deal with that showing up as a hard edge in the corner. Let's just go to the right view for a second and just move this up so it's sort of at the feet, just like that. Alright, that'll do. Let's go back to perspective, and let's just set up a camera so we have a view that we like. Camera's going to be based on what you see here in the viewport, but also your film gate. So if we go in here and we look for the rendering film gate, we might say, what's something like this maybe, or maybe you want it at an angle, look better, whichever you think is better. I'm just going to set it up sort of like this so it's kind of easy, maybe like that, maybe a little bit of an angle just so it looks cooler, like that. Maybe like that. Yeah, that'll do. Something like that. Okay, so that's my camera, and what I'm also going to do, just because I might be messing around in here just placing lights, is I'm going to set a bookmark for the camera. And you get your bookmark setter up here. There's a little icon with a green bookmark tab. If you right click on this, this is where you'll find your bookmarks in here. But to set a bookmark, it's real easy. All you need to do is click on that. And now when we right click again, you can see it says camera view 1. So if I mess around or from, doing something like that, I can always then right click and go to the camera view and it will return. Alrighty. So as far as materials and such, nothing complex. Maybe something with a little bit of a shine on it would be nice, but let's get the basic illumination up first. The light I'm going to have you guys do, actually I'll show you how to set it up, but then I'm just going to bring one in that I already did. We're just going to use a, we're not going to go into anything particularly complex. We're just going to use surface shaders, maybe on planes. So let's just grab some planes for a second and bring them up. And I will bring this one to over here, something like that. And I will Control D to duplicate, and I will put this one over here. maybe bring them forward a bit. Basically with lighting, what we really want to do is just set up what's called a 3-point lighting setup. And this will give us the ability to get a really nice even illumination across our model. Okay? So this way we'll get these two lights that are pointing this way. Okay? And then I'm just going to create one more and move it up. And this one's going to be over the top. Something like that. And I'll probably make this one a lot bigger. So it's kind of like a big diffuse lighting group. Something like that. Maybe I'll move it a little bit in like this. Just so we get that sort of a look. Maybe move these guys out. You'll notice as I'm moving these guys around, right now the manipulator is in world space. It's not really noticing that they're angled or anything. And the simplest way to change between world space manipulation and local space manipulation is to, for the transform that you're using, in our case, move, I can hold down the the W and just left click. And that will allow me to switch into object space. So when I do that, I can actually just move these objects in and out, but it kind of respects their actual orientation in space. So I can do something like this, maybe take this one back a little bit further. Okay, so that'll do. So let's just put a surface shader on these guys. I'm going to put one, the same one on all three. If I decide I want something different or I want different colors on them, I can always do that later. Okay, so what we're going to do is select the 3 light panels and going to go down to assign favorite material and surface shader, something like that. And here in the surface shader, in the out color, I'm just going to bring that up to white. Chances are we'll want something maybe a little bit different, but for now we're just looking for the basic illumination. So let's just go back to my camera view, and if we look into the render settings now, 2 things you want to double check. You want to make sure that you're not in Maya software. You do want to check that you are in Mental Ray. Okay. First thing we want to do is in the Common tab, go all the way down to the bottom to Render Options and shut off the default light. Maya is going to have that default light set to on, even though we're setting up our light panels, because they're not actually lights. We're using a surface shader. It's sort of a trick that we're using. We're using Final Gathering. So Maya is thinking it's doing us favors and leaving on a light that we really don't want. So the next thing we want to do is, under Mental Ray, we want to go down to Indirect Illumination or Indirect Lighting. And for now, all we're going to do is tap on Final Gathering. Chances are we're going to bring up this settings later, maybe add some secondary bounce, but I just want to get a feel for where we're at right now. So with that setting done, we're just going to hit the render and take a look at what we're at. And we got to bring it up quite a bit. Okay. So let's go first into the surface shader, and let's take this value up to something like a 3. And let's just take a look at that. Alright, getting a little bit better, starting to bright. Got a lot of splotchiness on the floor, which is okay. What I can see is like we are picking up a little bit of light here on the edges. That's because of the bevel that we applied, which is great. That's what I want to see. Let's go back into the surface shader and let's take this up to a level of 4. All right. Normally when you do 3-point lighting, your lights are at different levels. One's going to be a key light, one is going to be a fill light, maybe you have one in the back that's going to be a little bit brighter, maybe a rim light that's going to bring up your rim in the background here. Depends on what your setup's going to be. Here we're getting a very even illumination across the board, so we're definitely getting brighter. We're getting in pretty good shape. I'm going to want to control a couple of other things. So what I'm probably going to do is first, let's say, take this one on top, and I'm just going to expand it a little bit like that. This one on this side, I'm going to make this my key light, so I'll make it a tiny bit bigger, and I'm going to give it its own surface shader. So this one's going to get a whole new surface shader. But what I want to do here is I want to take this up to, let's say, kind of a blue. All right, and I'm going to take this up to a, I don't know, 4.5, something like that. All right, so what I did here is I'm going to tap that button, and that allows me to render again and see the difference between the two. Oops, I guess going back to my camera would be good. You can already see that it's still kind of dark. I'll make my key a little bit bigger. Maybe move it up just a little bit. And let's render that again, actually, just from that viewport. That's okay. Let's take this and scale that up as well, something like that. Not bad, pretty good. Let's take a look at that in the right camera. So I'm just going to go to my bookmark here, move this down, and do a render. Okay, not bad. Not bad. I think if we played with materials for any length, I think we could get something interesting here in the back. Maybe a little bit of rim lighting. Maybe something in here to just fill this a little bit. What I might do is grab one of these, something like this. Maybe grab this guy up here. And I'm going to Control Duplicate, and I'm going to grab this, move it down to here, and scale it way down, something like that, pretty small. And I'm going to move it in, let's frame in so I can actually see what I'm doing. What I'm doing here is just kind of putting a little fill light in. And what I want to do here is make this a lot smaller, something like this. Just want to kind of kick a light from underneath. Something like this. Rotate it down. Pull it back a little bit so it's not too right there. And just kind of widen it out so I get like a general sort of brightening in there. Let's see what that is. So all that is really just that small like kick light that's going to be down there. Might even move it closer to the floor. Pull it back a little bit. Just like that. I don't really want it as a light source as much as just sort of a fill. See if we can bring that up just a little bit. Better. So the difference here now is just this sort of, see where it just sort of brings up that edge just a little bit like that. Might even just push it in a little bit further. Maybe just expand it just a little bit like that. Let's take a look at that. Yeah, just sort of brings that up. Okay, so I think that's pretty good. What we also could do is look at the material that's on these. I'll leave this to you guys to decide whether or not you want to get particularly involved in the lighting. You may even want to put a material on the floor, something like that. You could always grab the floor and let's say assign a new material, maybe a blend. I think I have, I'm just clicking on the color and you guys know how to do this. Go into File, and I happen to have a wood that I was playing with before. Something like this. It's gigantic looking wood, so we'll probably have to go up into the tiling, the Place 2D node, and in this case I think 5 by 12, something like that might work. Let's take a look at this. Maybe we need a bump on it. Ooh. That's a terrible, blindingly bright light we have here. Let's see. I think we could remove some of these from the reflections. So what we could do is, because they're starting to show up in the reflections, so we have the ability to select these objects, which are just planes, here and here and here, and if we go into their render stats, and I'll just close this up, it'll probably come up like that, but there's this tab in here called render stats, and we can remove them from reflections, which might be a good idea. So let's just remove these from reflections. So I'm going to grab that and remove that from reflections. Let's go back to the original camera. Chances are this is just too shiny, so let's go back to the blend. Take the specular down, this way down, and you just play with it a little bit. Let's just see what that does. Yeah, something like that. You could do that. I mean, it's sort of a lot of floor texture for what we're doing here. So you may not want to use it at all. Maybe it'd be better just using take down the reflectivity altogether and do something like this. Something like that. And you can just dress it up as much as you want, but that's basically what you'd be looking to do. In this case, you may not want that floor texture in there. Maybe you just want to give it a little bit of color. Maybe some sort of, I don't know, like a really light blue, like it was in a kid's room or something like that. Do something like that, make it like a floor. It's probably going to look horrible. You know, something like that. Maybe take the saturation down a little bit, brightness up. There you go. Yeah, something simple. Again, I think it has a bit of reflection in there that we probably don't need or want. We could always get rid of reflections altogether. You could click up here where it says blend and just bring that down to a nice Lambert. And then re-render that. And now as far as the splotchiness, we could go into the Interact Lighting tab again, go to Final Gathering, and you could bring this up to like 200 if you wanted to. What also can be very helpful is just to get a little bit of that bounce light up there, we could take a secondary bounce, maybe one secondary bounce, and maybe Final Gathering this filter, take it up to 1. And let's just save that and see. So that's less splotchy. I think the secondary bounce brought up a lot of the light inside of the crevices. So if it's too illuminated now, you can always bring down the value of your surface shader. Maybe you think your surface shader is too hot. So as opposed to 4.5, you might bring the surface shader down to 4. Hit the button. And something like that. Like I said, fast, easy sort of a setup, short render times. You also have the ability under the quality tab, you might want to just, you could hand raise this up to something like a 0.6. Mental Ray does have a preset for production, so you can go load, preset, and just set this to production if you wanted. And we can look at the difference between that and that. And you get this. Not a whole lot of difference, and I just pushed the camera out just a little bit. So between this and this, not a whole lot of difference, but I think that'll show off the piece as much as you might want to do. And you know, if the blue background's not your cup of tea, just change it to something. You might want to do something that's you know, a little bluer or whatever. I kind of like this, so I would probably leave it there, although maybe take it down just a little bit. That way that'll allow the board itself to pop out. So hopefully that makes sense. Basically all you're doing is you're creating planes. You could create spheres. You could create any geometry that'll take a material, assign a surface shader under the materials. You're going to then control the brightness for your surface shader on your planes, or you know, whatever geometry you want to assign them to. On the out color, in the HSV scale here, you're just going to want to up this or down this, depending on if you want more or less, and that will give you a nice even illumination, and you're in good shape then to show off your toss across animation. Hopefully that was helpful, and if you have any questions, send me a note. Take care, guys.